Well, as we said off top, the day in Ottawa has been dominated by talk of trade and a threat from Donald Trump to impose a punishing tariff if Canada does not address illegal drugs and migrants making their way across our southern border. But another issue that's been brewing has to do with Canada's defense spending. Some U.S. politicians say Canada should face consequences for not investing more, something I discussed with U.S. Senator Tim Kaine this past weekend at the Halifax International Security Forum. Senator, thank you for the time.
Absolutely. Great to be with you.
I want to begin with the criticism that Canada is hearing from certain American politicians who are criticizing Canada's defense investment, talking about potential consequences. How seriously should Canadians be listening to that message?
I think, criticism, some criticize, some urge and encourage, and maybe I'm a little more on the diplomatic side. A number of years ago, only 3 of the NATO nations were meeting their 2% of their GDP into defense spending. President Trump, when he was president, really pushed that. And then, frankly, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has also been a moment of clarity. And so now we're well into the mid-20s in nations that are meeting their 2%. Canada is not yet there, but we heard loud and clear from the defense minister that we're going to get there. And the commitment that was made by the Prime Minister and others is Canada would be there by 2032, but even sooner if some things happen. And we had very candid discussions with the Defense Minister about, for example, if our acquisition processes, either in Canada or in the United States, are very slow, it's hard to get to the 2% level soon if everything that you're ordering is going to be delivered 4 or 5 years from now. And so we talked about acquisition challenges. But we also talked about the reasons for Canada to get to that minimum of 2%, which is certainly the global battle between democracies and autocracies, and Canada is such a wonderful member of the democracy team, but also new challenges that Canada and North America face in the Arctic, for example. And I think those everyday challenges are no longer theoretical. They really are everyday challenges. And so, I think we all need to step up and do more, and we heard very positive messages from the Canadian officials that we dialogued with this weekend about that.
You mentioned the Arctic, and of course the updated defense policy here in Canada has a very much Arctic northern focus. Is that where the United States believes Canada needs to show its expertise?
Canada has an expertise more than we do. I mean, I think there are things we can do together. But that's, when you look at something like a NATO alliance, everybody has their value add. Everybody has something strategic that they bring to the table. NATO's growth to include Sweden and Finland. Sweden, very capable military. Finland, very capable military. Real understanding for Russian behavior. When we grow NATO, everybody's bringing their value add to the table, and we definitely view one of Canada's main value adds is this expertise in the Arctic, which is going to be to the good not only of Canada, but of all NATO allies and all democracies.
It was interesting to hear the former president of Taiwan address the forum yesterday, because I think it might surprise people to hear her commitment and her belief that despite the security challenges that Taiwan faces over the horizon, the battle against Ukraine must not be abandoned, because it will have an impact on what happens in the South China Sea, and in particular the Strait of Taiwan. The Biden administration has been very concerted about shoring up democratic allies in the South Pacific, in the South China Sea. There is now a new administration. Questions as to whether or not the United States, along with countries like Canada, will traverse the Taiwan Strait to keep the argument of international waters. What's your feeling on that? Is Taiwan at risk with the new administration?
I wouldn't say at risk, but I will say it's a little bit early to tell. The Biden administration in forging the AUKUS partnership, and I played a key role in that as a member of the Armed Services and Foreign Relations Committee. AUKUS, the Quad, the renewed rapprochement really between the Republic of Korea and Japan, all of these things are parts of a network of alliances in the Indo-Pacific to try to provide support for allies, including Taiwan, and provide a deterrence to Chinese aggression. what will the Trump administration's approach to this be? One signal that's positive is the nomination of Marco Rubio to be Secretary of State, because Senator Rubio has been very forward-leaning on concerns about China, but also support for Taiwan, support for alliances like AUKUS, and so that he will be the Trump administration's chief diplomat, and I'm confident he'll be confirmed easily in the Senate. That is an early positive sign.
An early positive sign, but of course, based on the first Trump administration, there can be a high turnover in the Trump cabinet. What type of insecurity does that create?
Well, there can be high turnover, and also some of the other officials being named in the national security space, I'll admit, are a little more head-scratchers. We're going to have a tough confirmation hearing on the Secretary of Defense. That's a little bit unusual. The Secretary of Defense is usually a day one confirmation. I think that's not going to be the case in this instance. And then some of the others, whether it's Tulsi Gabbard or some of the Sebastian Gorka, who are being named, not all of whom are Senate confirmable, but as you're trying to read, okay, what are the tea leaves telling you about the direction? There's some mixed evidence, but again, I'm going to not assume the negative. I'm going to look at the positive, and Senator Rubio, to my way of thinking, not only on issues like China or pro-democracy for Ukraine, pro-NATO. Senator Rubio and I have the bill that we passed a year ago that says no American president can withdraw from NATO, absent a 2/3 vote of the Senate or an act of Congress, really expressing the Article 1 support for NATO. That's a Marco Rubio priority. Marco Rubio will be the first Secretary of State that I have served with who has a real passion around the Americas. I was a missionary in Honduras. I don't think the U.S. pays enough attention in the Americas, and that's Yukon to Patagonia. We go east and west, and we don't pay enough attention in the Americas. Marco Rubio will be a guy who we don't have to wonder where his passions lie. The Americas is his passion. So those are all good early signs, but the devil's in the details, so we have much more to see.
Well, we are watching from this side of the border. I know you have to catch your flight. Senator, thank you for the time.
Yeah, I'm really glad we could do this. Thanks.